I paid $12,000 up front for the event. A Santa Barbara Vineyard Estate full lighting rig string quartet champagne tower, and a Mexican-Californian fusion chef who'd been featured in 2 food documentaries. The whole thing was planned down to the breath between courses. It was going to be their moment. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary and my dad's official retirement from St. Vincent's Hospital. Not some folding chair BBQ in my cousin's uneven backyard. Not this year. This year would be polished, real. It had been my idea. I brought it up during dinner on a rainy Thursday in February. My mom looked at me like I'd sprouted antlers. My dad cleared his throat and asked if I was serious. And I was. After everything they'd done for me, adopting me out of a group home in Busan, raising me in a small town that barely knew what to do with a Korean kid who didn't speak English until 2nd grade, I figured I could at least give them this. Sophie, my younger sister, muttered something like, "Cool, let me know if you want help with the vibe." Which in Sophie speak meant, I'm gonna hijack this later and pretend it was my idea. But I nodded. Kept calm. Let it roll. I'd learned early in life that it's not the first punch that knocks you out. It's the second one, the one you didn't see coming. So I worked quietly. Rented the venue, booked the chef, paid the lighting deposit, scheduled a wine tasting with the vineyard's event coordinator, set up a shared drive with floor plans and table layouts, even picked out the menu cards. Every detail lived under my name, every contract, every payment, every promise. By mid-March, I'd dropped nearly 12 grand my savings from working overtime last quarter, and a freelance gig consulting a startup in LA. No one offered to split the cost. Not even Sophie, who, as I later discovered, had been working with Uncle Mitch on designing the visual identity for the party. They called it Hacienda Minimalism meets Ivy League Elegance. I found out about it through a mood board Sophie accidentally airdropped at the house. It had everything: color palettes, Pinterest pins, seating plans, and yes, a guest list. My name wasn't on it. It didn't even occur to me at first. I assumed it was just a placeholder or a typo. Until I dropped by the house one Sunday to deliver the revised catering schedule. Uncle Mitch and Sophie were seated at the kitchen island sipping white wine and tapping through slides on her iPad. I asked what they were finalizing, and Mitch, without looking up, said, "We're curating the flow. Guest list energy zones impact seating." I stared at him. Am I missing something? Sophie smiled all teeth like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "Don't worry, Noah. It's nothing personal. It's just, we're trying to keep the energy consistent. It's not about names, it's about the vibe." I asked, am I not part of the vibe? No answer. Just a long sip of wine and the sound of fingers swiping to the next slide. I left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say a word. Just got in my car and drove aimlessly along Highway 1 past cliffs and crashing waves and a part of me I thought I'd buried years ago. That night, I called my mom. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. Just asked her straight. I saw the guest list. She paused. That kind of pause where you can hear someone blinking. Then she said, "Noah, sometimes you push too hard to be part of something that was never meant for you." That was the exact moment my heart stopped reaching. The next morning, I woke up, brewed coffee, and called my bank. Flagged every transaction related to the event. Filed disputes. Cited unauthorized use, technically true since no one else was on the account. Then I called the vineyard. Canceled the venue. Called the lighting guy. He was chill refunded without hesitation. The quartet was already booked for a wedding the next day, so they didn't mind dropping. The chef called back and said, "Honestly, sounds like they didn't deserve you. He refunded most of the deposit." I voided the alcohol permit through the county office. No permit, no open bar, no exceptions. Then I sat back, opened my calendar, and cleared the entire week. On the day of the party, I stayed home in my sweats, made banana pancakes, and streamed lo-fi jazz. Around noon, the texts started rolling in. "Sophie, Noah, where's the food truck, Mitch? The AV team says you canceled Dad, 12 missed calls." When I finally picked up, he sounded panicked. What happened? Why didn't the chef show? Why can't they serve alcohol? Where are the light? I took a slow sip of coffee. I guess I wasn't part of the vibe. Then I hung up. And that right there, that was when the wire finally snapped. By the 3rd day, the silence had a shape. It hovered in the corners of my apartment like a house guest who knew they weren't welcome. Nobody said a word. No follow-up. No, we're sorry. Just quiet. At first I thought maybe they were regrouping. Maybe someone would reach out with a real apology, an explanation, a human moment. But no, nothing. Just digital stillness. Until the Facebook post started. Uncle Mitch shared a blurry photo of an empty vineyard lawn with the caption, "Sometimes the people you trust most let you down." Aunt Evelyn reshared it with a broken heart emoji. Then Sophie posted a black and white quote graphic, "Bitterness is a poison you drink hoping others will die." Subtle, real subtle. Still, I said nothing. Because what was there to say that I planned the entire event from scratch and got cut out like background noise, that my name didn't even make it onto the guest list for my own parents' celebration? That the people who were supposed to be my family treated me like a project they outgrew? Then came the group text from my mom. "We miss you, Noah. Things got a little out of hand. Let's not let one misunderstanding ruin everything." One misunderstanding, you don't accidentally erase someone. I didn't reply, but the message kept echoing in my mind, ruin everything. Everything implied something was whole to begin with. That week, I stopped covering Sophie's car insurance. She'd been in between gigs for 3 months and conveniently forgot that I was the one making her monthly payments. I didn't say a word, just stopped. 10 days later, she called sounding panicked. My policy lapsed. What happened? I said I figured you'd want the energy to be consistent. Then I hung up. A few days after that, the medical bill started piling up for my dad. He had a heart bypass last year and was still on half a dozen prescriptions. I'd been covering his out-of-pocket costs quietly, routinely, because he was my dad. But they made it clear I wasn't really family. Not in the parts that counted. So I pulled back. No more auto transfers. No more quiet support. Just mail arriving like usual, only now with red stamps and overdue notices. 3 weeks later, I got a mass email from my mom. "Hi, family. We're going through a bit of a tight patch. If anyone can contribute toward your father's medication this month, please reach out. Even $50 helps." I read it once, then deleted it. But what broke me wasn't the texts or the guilt trips or the sudden interest in reconciliation. What broke me was the car. It was a Sunday afternoon when I drove out to their house to grab a few boxes I'd been storing in the garage. Old college textbooks, some photo albums, a crate of vinyls from my Berkeley roommate days. But mostly I was there for the Mustang. My Mustang. A 99 GT black with burgundy stripes rebuilt from the frame, up with my friend Luis during a summer we didn't sleep. I didn't have space for it in my apartment complex, so I left it in their garage under a weatherproof tarp. I told them never to move it, never. The garage was open when I pulled up, empty. At first I thought I had the wrong day. Then I stood in the doorway staring at the oil stains like they were crime scene chalk outlines. I called my dad. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey Noah, everything okay?" "Where's the Mustang?" Silence. A slow inhale. "Then we sold it. You hadn't driven it in years, it was just sitting there." I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just stood there, phone warm against my ear, heart flatlining. "It wasn't yours to sell. You said to keep it safe. And you thought that meant liquidate it. It was taking up space, son. You live in the city now? We thought it was just a memory you outgrew." It wasn't about the car, it was about what it meant. A symbol of who I'd been before I twisted myself into a version they could tolerate. It was the one thing I still owned that felt untouched by the way they'd reshaped me. That was the day I went cold. No more texts, no more birthdays, no more being the emotional shock absorber for a family that treated me like an expendable organ. And yet the world didn't end. I kept working. I cooked. I slept better. I even applied for an apartment with a garage because apparently I still believed in second chances for machines, if not people. It had been nearly 2 months when I got the call from Sophie. I didn't pick up. Then a text. "Hey, I know things are weird, but I could really use some help. It's just until I land something. Rent's behind and my car's in the shop again." She included a photo of us as kids, me in a Power Rangers hoodie, her missing front teeth. I read the message twice. Thought about how she'd laughed when I wasn't part of the vibe. How she'd watched as they deleted me in real time. I didn't reply. The next day she tried again. "Please, Noah, you've always been the one who keeps things together." And that's exactly why I wouldn't. 3 days later, I got a message from my cousin Eli. "You around? Think we need to talk. It's about the Mustang." When I met Eli, it was at this quiet diner off the 101, one of those places that hasn't updated its booth since the 80s, but still serves the best cherry pie in the county. He was already there, no food, just a black coffee going cold in front of him. His leg was bouncing under the table like he was trying to shake off guilt. I hadn't seen him in months, not since my grandmother's last birthday, where he gave a toast so saccharine it made my teeth hurt. But today he looked different, less performative, more like someone holding something they weren't sure they should say. "Noah," he said, voice low. I didn't want to text this. I needed to say it face to face. "Okay," I said, "then say it." He took a breath, looked out the window, then back at me. "It wasn't your dad who sold the Mustang." The words didn't register at first. They just hovered weightless, waiting for gravity to hit. "It was Sophie," he continued. "She used your dad's info. Found some guy online who paid cash. $3,000, I think. Used it to clear a personal loan she was hiding from your parents." I blinked hard. She forged his name. She had access to the garage. The pink slip was still there. She knew what she was doing. And Dad just covered for her. Eli nodded. He didn't even want to lie. "But your mom said it'd blow everything up if the truth got out. So he took the blame." I sat back, eyes fixed on the salt shaker between us. That car wasn't just a machine, it was hours of grease-busted knuckles and late-night drives down Pacific Coast Highway with Luis. It was memory-made metal, and they sold it like it was an old lamp. I didn't say much after that. Eli kept talking, maybe hoping I'd blow up, maybe hoping I wouldn't. But I was too busy watching the cracks in the vinyl booth trying to understand how deep this fracture really ran. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. They're planning something. I overheard Rose and your mom on the phone. They're trying to get the lake cabin transferred. I froze, the one Grandma left me. He nodded. She left it to you years ago. They're trying to change the paperwork, quietly. My jaw clenched. That cabin wasn't just a piece of land, it was where I learned how to fish, where Grandma taught me how to fix a screen door, where she'd say things like, "This place is your quiet." They already reached out to the county, Eli said. Pretended to be you. I left cash on the table and walked out without another word. Monday morning, I drove straight to the county records office in Monterey. Brought my ID, old paperwork, even a copy of the original notarized letter from Grandma leaving the cabin in my name. Sure enough, there had been an inquiry the previous week, name spelled right signature, almost convincing. Almost. I spent the next 2 weeks working with a lawyer. Locked the title, set up identity verification, added a password requirement for any future change request. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted them to find out the hard way. Because this wasn't just about disrespect. This was theft. Manipulation. A slow, coordinated erasure. Back home, I changed my number. Opened new accounts. Set up a trust. Moved into my new apartment with the garage. No one got the address. And then I waited. Because people like that, they always come back. Especially when the money runs dry. I didn't expect it so soon. I was at work zoning out during a finance call when my phone lit up Sophie. I let it ring out. Then came the text. I know things are weird, but can we talk? It's important. 5 missed calls that day. 3 from Mom, 1 from Dad. The next morning there was a knock at my door. I peeked through the blinds. It was Sophie. She looked wrecked, makeup smudged, hair pulled back like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't wait for an invite. Just started talking on the porch, like we were in the middle of a conversation she'd forgotten to start. My car got repossessed, she said. I'm 3 months behind on rent. I'm being sued. Fraud. A bounced check under Dad's name. I said nothing. It was just one favor, Noah, just one time. I didn't think you even cared about the car anymore. That part told me everything I needed to know. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. I know about the sale. I know about the fake signature. I know about the cabin. She froze, like a child caught pocketing candy. Her voice dropped. But you're still family. You're supposed to help us. Us. The people who cut me out. Sold my stuff. Tried to erase my name from the one place Grandma said was mine. And somehow I still owed them. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, it's not happening. Not this time. Not ever again. Then I walked back inside and closed the door. 3 days later, I got a message from my dad. We've been talking. We want to clear the air. Sit down as a family. I didn't answer. Then late Friday night, my phone lit up again. A name I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Rose. When Aunt Rose's name lit up on my screen, I nearly laughed. The last time I'd heard her voice, she was giving a passive-aggressive toast at the anniversary party that never happened. Something about family being the people who show up. Now here she was, showing up uninvited, unannounced, through a digital crack in the door I'd slammed shut months ago. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted. We've been talking. It's time to move forward. We all want peace. Let's schedule a video call. Not, I'm sorry, not... We were wrong, just vague PR-style language that screamed damage control. I ignored it. The next evening, my phone buzzed again, this time a group FaceTime invite. I almost declined. But something in me, the same curiosity that makes people slow down for car wrecks, made me hit accept. The screen filled with familiar faces. My mom and dad looking older and more tired than I remembered. Sophie eyes red like she'd been crying or rehearsing to. And Aunt Rose arms folded like she was presiding over a small claims court. No one spoke at first, just awkward blinking and forced smiles. Then my dad said, Noah, we've been thinking about everything that happened. We miss you. We didn't handle things well. My mom chimed in. It got messy. That's not what we wanted. We hope you can be the bigger person. Sophie, suddenly soft-spoken, said, I'm sorry if you felt left out. That wasn't the intention. If you felt, not you were excluded. Not we did something wrong. Just that slippery non-apology language people use when they don't want to admit anything. Then she added, we've all made mistakes, but if we want to move on, we need to take accountability. Are you willing to do that too? That was when I realized what this really was. Not a reconciliation. Not a reckoning. It was a negotiation. A power play. They wanted my compliance, not my healing. I stared at the screen, not blinking. Are you sorry for selling my car? Silence. Are you sorry for trying to forge my name on the cabin documents? More silence. My mom looked away. Are you sorry for cutting me out of the anniversary party I paid for? For letting me be mocked? For expecting me to fund your lives while treating me like I never belonged? Aunt Rose leaned forward. This isn't about digging up the past, Noah. It's about moving forward. No, I said. It's about the past. Because if you can't even acknowledge what you did, then what exactly am I moving forward from? My dad's jaw tightened. So what, you're just going to cut us off forever? I nodded. I already have. Then I ended the call. No explosion, no shouting, just quiet resignation, a clean break. After that, nothing. No texts, no voicemails, just digital ghosts floating in the blocked section of my phone. And I felt fine, better than fine, until 2 weeks later. I was at the cabin. Hadn't been there since I locked down the title. I went up to check the plumbing, make sure the place was ready for winter. It still smelled like cedar and old paper, just like Grandma used to keep it. I opened a closet in the main bedroom to grab some linens and found a loose floorboard slightly ajar. Curious, I pried it open. Inside was a letter, yellowed, slightly folded carefully with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. I sat on the floor and unfolded it, fingers trembling. Dated 5 years ago. She wrote about how she knew the others might one day come after the cabin. That when people think something has value, they circle it like vultures. She said she left it to me because I never asked her for anything. Because I visited, listened, and never made her feel like a burden. And at the end, she wrote, "If they ever turn on you, come here. This place was always yours." I read it 3 times, then a 4th. I could almost hear her voice in the kitchen humming Sinatra while pouring tea into chipped porcelain mugs. The only person who had ever seen me, really seen me, had left me a fortress. A quiet wooden sanctuary tucked into the trees. I stayed there that night, lit a fire, and let the silence hold me like it used to when I was a kid. But the peace didn't last. 3 weeks later, I got a certified letter in the mail from a law firm. Inside was a notice my parents were contesting the will. The letter was cold, clinical, and signed in blue ink by someone named Kara J. Lipsky, Estate Litigation Counsel. Just reading the name gave me a chill, like someone had stamped a barcode on a memory and decided it was up for auction. My parents were officially contesting the will. Not directly, of course. The claim was wrapped in legal euphemisms, undue influence, cognitive decline, lack of formal witnesses. I knew better. It wasn't about legality, it was about control. It was about erasing the last place I had left that was untouched by their manipulation. I stood there in the kitchen of the cabin, the fire still crackling, letter in one hand, mug of tea in the other, and I swear for the first time in years I felt rage, not sadness, not grief, not even disappointment, just a steady, searing heat under my ribs. I thought about my grandmother's voice, her steady hands fixing the old screen door the way she would say, "Let them bark, but don't open the gate." And here I was staring at lawyers trying to kick that gate down. So I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. This woman named Emily Soto, a probate expert in Monterey. She was blunt, wore glasses too big for her face, and didn't tolerate sentimentality. "You're not just defending a deed," she said. "You're defending the intent of someone who trusted you when she had no one else." I hired her that afternoon. We filed a response within 48 hours. But the fallout came fast. Sophie called crying. Said she had no idea our parents were doing this, swore she was on my side now. I told her I didn't believe her. Then she got defensive. I'm just trying to hold the family together. I asked her where that energy was when they sold my car or forged a title behind my back. She went quiet. Then she asked if I'd consider mediation. I laughed. Mediation is for misunderstandings. This was theft. 2 days later, I started getting tagged in weird online comments, local Facebook groups where people argued over ethics and inheritance. I recognized some of the names. My cousin Lucas, his wife, even Aunt Rose. They never mentioned my name directly, but the subtext was loud and clear. Some people are so greedy they'll tear a family apart over a cabin. That's when it clicked. They weren't just trying to take the cabin. They were trying to rewrite the story, make me the villain in their Hallmark family drama. So I posted one thing, just one. A photo of my grandmother's letter, blurred enough for privacy but clear enough to show her handwriting. The caption read, "Some inherit houses, some inherit silence." I inherited both. That was it. No names, no accusations. But the silence that followed was louder than anything they'd said so far. The legal process dragged. Depositions, discovery, emails exchanged between my mom and Aunt Rose, surfaced emails where they discussed nudging Grandma toward a joint deed transfer as early as 2 years ago. One line burned itself into my memory. "He's too naive to fight it if it's done quietly." That's what my mother wrote about me. The next week, their lawyer reached out with a settlement offer. They'd drop the contest if I agreed to share the cabin as a rotational family retreat. I forwarded it to Emily, who called it what it was, a trap. They'll get their foot in the door, and you'll never get it back. I declined. Then came the final twist. Devin called. The cousin who'd warned me about the car, the cabin, all of it. His voice shook. They're trying again. New angle. They're using Grandma's medical files. Saying she was already declining when she updated the will. I asked how he knew. He said he overheard a call. I asked why he was telling me again. He paused. Because I think I'm next. They're turning on anyone who won't play along. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a dispute. It was a purge. I wasn't the first one they tried to erase. I was just the first one who refused to go quietly. Devin's warning echoed in my head like a freight train in a tunnel. They're turning on anyone who won't play along. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling of the cabin, every old wood beam suddenly feeling like a loaded question. My stomach churned, not out of fear, but something sharper. Anticipation. They were escalating, and I knew they'd show their hand soon. I didn't expect it would come in the form of a county investigator knocking at my door. It was a Tuesday morning, fog still clinging to the trees like cobwebs, when I opened the cabin door to a woman in a gray coat holding a badge. Mr. Regan, I'm here regarding a report filed about the mental fitness of your grandmother in the months leading up to her passing. Would you have a few minutes to talk? My mouth went dry. I invited her in. She was polite, professional, and disturbingly efficient. She asked if I'd seen any signs of cognitive decline. I answered calmly, truthfully, no. I pulled out the logs my grandmother used to keep, pages of handwritten notes about cabin repairs, grocery lists, even her crossword puzzles, each solved in ink. That wasn't the mind of someone declining, that was clarity. The agent nodded, asked a few more questions, then thanked me and left. But her visit left something behind, a quiet fury I couldn't shake. My family was trying to drag my grandmother's memory through the mud, just to steal a cabin that wasn't even worth 6 figures on Zillow. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about power, legacy, about rewriting who mattered. I called Emily and told her everything. They're playing the long game, she said. They're hoping you'll get exhausted. Most people settle when the emotional cost gets higher than the legal one. I told her they picked the wrong guy. That week, I pulled every photo, every video, every voicemail I had of my grandmother into a private digital archive. I scanned every recipe she handwrote, every birthday card she ever mailed me with $10 tucked inside, and a note that said, "Don't spend it all on root beer." I wasn't just preserving evidence, I was preserving her. Then Sophie showed up. Not called, not texted, just knocked on the cabin door at dusk, mascara already halfway down her cheeks. She looked at the fireplace behind me and whispered, "It still smells like her." I didn't answer. She stepped inside without asking. Said she was tired of picking sides. Said Dad was back in the hospital again and Mom was losing it. I waited. Then came the ask. They want to drop the contest. No lawyers, just talk. I stared at her. Talk like a sit-down, a heart-to-heart after months of character assassination and forged documents? She didn't answer. She just looked small, worn down, like maybe for once she wasn't faking it. I agreed under one condition: the conversation would happen at the cabin with a neutral witness. She hesitated but nodded. 3 days later they arrived. My mother in her perfectly ironed cardigan. My father thinner than I remembered, moving slowly. Aunt Rose face tight like she was bracing for a courtroom. And Jenna, oh Jenna, wearing sunglasses inside like the world's most reluctant soap opera villain. I'd asked Emily to sit in the corner silent, just observing. They didn't like that, but I didn't care. We sat around the old wooden table my grandfather built with his hands, the one my grandmother refused to sell even during the lean years. My mom started. "We've made mistakes." She glanced around, expecting nods. Jenna chimed in. "This whole thing got out of hand. No one meant to hurt you." I asked. Then who filed the report questioning Grandma's mental health? Silence. Who forged the title inquiry? Who used my father's name to sell my car? More silence. Aunt Rose folded her arms. "You're holding onto old wounds. We're trying to move forward." That phrase again. Move forward like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I looked at my dad. "Did you know they tried to rewrite Grandma's will before she died?" His eyes darted to my mother, then down. "I didn't know the full extent," he muttered. My mother cleared her throat. "Look, we want peace. Let's put this behind us." I leaned in. "Only if you all admit what you did. Out loud. Right now?" They shifted uncomfortably. Jenna snapped, "Why do you need blood? Isn't it enough we're here?" I stood up. "No, you don't get to pretend this is reconciliation. This is damage control." Then my mom said something I'll never forget. If Grandma really meant for you to have all this, she would have told the rest of us. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out the framed photo of me and Grandma fishing off the dock when I was 8. She was smiling, sun hat, crooked hand on my shoulder. "She did," I said. "You just weren't listening." Suddenly, Emily stood, calm but firm. "This isn't going anywhere productive. We're done here." I opened the door. They filed out, no hugs, no apologies, just stiff backs and unspoken curses. I watched their car disappear into the trees. Back inside, Emily turned to me. "They're going to retaliate. You know that, right?" I nodded. "Let them try. I've already won." But I hadn't. Not yet. Because an hour later, I got a text. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize and a sentence that knocked the wind out of me. "You should check the county site. They've filed again." The moment I read the message, "You should check the county site. They've filed again." My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like my body knew this wasn't a surprise anymore, just the next move in a pattern I'd finally come to recognize. I sat at my kitchen counter, the old pine one my grandmother stained by hand, and opened my laptop. It took 2 clicks to confirm a new petition to contest the deed had been filed, this time citing emotional coercion. Emotional coercion. As if my presence in my grandmother's life, my love, my loyalty had been some kind of manipulation. Emily came by that afternoon. I showed her the filing. She looked at it, then looked at me. "They're doubling down? Or dying, trying," I muttered. That evening, I lit a fire in the hearth and read through every word of the filing. They were trying to claim I'd isolated Grandma, manipulated her into naming me sole beneficiary out of guilt and pressure. They even attached old voicemails I'd left her, sweet casual messages about doctor appointments, groceries, even the time I promised I'd bring her favorite tea if the store restocked it. They were using love as evidence of guilt. I could have crumbled. But something steadier held me up. That letter she'd left, the one I'd found beneath the loose floorboard, was still folded in my pocket like armor. And this time I had something more community. I made a few calls, not to lawyers, to people, real people. Her old friend Louise from the garden club, Pastor Nolan from the local church, the high school librarian who still remembered how my grandmother donated all those books after the roof collapse. They wrote statements, told stories, talked about how Grandma always said, "That boy's the only one who shows up just to listen." When it came time for the hearing, I showed up in a suit that barely fit anymore, clutching a folder that wasn't thick with law-just letters. I saw them across the room. My mother, Aunt Rose, Jenna, even Marcus was there now, lurking behind them like some reluctant chorus member in a family tragedy. Their attorney started speaking first, all smooth tones and practiced sorrow. "My clients merely want to ensure the late Ms. Fletcher's estate is honored in a way that reflects her true wishes." I didn't flinch. I waited. When it was my turn, I didn't lead with facts. I led with memory. I talked about the cabin's creaky porch swing, about summer nights chasing fireflies, about the way Grandma used to whistle while making pancakes. I showed them the letter. The judge read it quietly, then looked up at me and asked, "Do you believe your grandmother was of sound mind when she wrote this?" I didn't even blink. She was sharper than any of us. The room held its breath. Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. The judge nodded, but then pulled out a new document. "I need to bring something to your attention," he said. "This came in anonymously this morning." My stomach sank. He held up a printed screenshot of an email. From Jenna to a friend, bragging about finally getting her hands on the lake house soon, and how the old man still thinks it was his idea. She'd sent it last week. Stupid, careless, and exactly what I needed. The judge placed it on the record. Jenna's face went ghost white. My mother looked down. Aunt Rose looked like she wanted to evaporate. Case dismissed. But even then, there was no victory dance, no gloating, just quiet relief that justice had finally edged out manipulation. Emily squeezed my arm gently. "It's over," she whispered. "Almost," I said, because I still had one thing left to do. I drove straight from the courthouse to my grandmother's grave. Brought her the same wildflowers she used to pick from the edge of the lake. I sat there for a while, the sun dipping behind the pines, and read her letter again. This time, I wasn't looking for reassurance. I was saying goodbye. Back at the cabin that night, I opened every window, let the breeze in, and made a pot of tea. Then I called Devin. He answered on the first ring. "They're not talking to me anymore," he said. "I figured," I replied. "You still got a place to crash? I've been couch surfing." Come up this weekend. Bring your tools. This deck needs work. He was quiet a second. Yeah, I'd like that. Later that week, Sophie texted. Not to beg, not to manipulate, just a single message, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, because I'd finally accepted some doors don't need to be reopened just because someone knocks. I thought that was it. Closure. Peace. But just before midnight, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail that followed was short. This isn't over, Roger. You think you won, but you don't know what's coming next. I listened to that voicemail 3 times trying to match the voice. Male. Calm, but with a bitter edge. Someone who thought he still had power. And it wasn't just the words, it was the tone. It wasn't a warning, it was a threat. But what he didn't realize is I'd already been through the storm. I wasn't afraid of getting wet anymore. I didn't call back, I didn't text. I just forwarded the voicemail to my attorney and added a note, just in case. Then I turned off the lights and sat in the cabin's den, listening to the crickets buzz outside. It was the same chair Grandma used to knit and the same throw blanket she always claimed was too ugly to throw out. I kept it. Even the ugly things mattered when they came from love. The next morning I got a message from Devin. He'd gone back to his parents' house to grab a few old tools and overheard something apparently Aunt Rose and my mother had contacted a probate investigator. They were trying to dig up mental vulnerability claims about my grandmother's final months, hoping to unearth something to reopen the case. But the joke was on them. She didn't die confused. She died firm. The woman was scheduling her own prescriptions and arguing about local politics 2 days before her last breath. Every medical file backed it. Every neighbor knew it. And Devin said one more thing. They're starting to turn on each other. That part made me pause. When people like them realize they can't manipulate the outside world anymore, they begin manipulating each other. Because control's their only language. And when you take away their favorite target, they eat themselves alive. Over the next few weeks, the silence shifted. Not the cold, calculated silence of their "we're ignoring you to win" campaign, but the kind of hollow silence that follows when things truly collapse. I stopped seeing Facebook posts. Jenna deleted her profile. Aunt Rose's Etsy shop shut down. My mother posted a photo of a rose garden with the caption, "Some things bloom again," and got 2 likes, one from someone I didn't recognize. My father hadn't said a word since the video call. I found out he moved into a trailer behind Rose's house after the bank foreclosed. Meanwhile, I painted the deck. Devin showed up with a cooler of beers, a socket wrench, and a new haircut that made him look like he finally wanted to be seen again. Emily joined us the next day, bringing her dog and a tray of cinnamon rolls. We worked through the heat, the rain, even a busted tire. It didn't matter. We were building something. And then one quiet Sunday afternoon, I got one final letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name, clean cursive. Inside a single page. My grandmother's old notepad. Not new. This one dated back even further than the first. Her handwriting was shakier here, less structured. But the words hit like a stone. If they ever make you feel like love is a transaction, come back to this place. This land was built on something deeper. Real care doesn't come with conditions. You deserve to be loved for simply being you. And if no one else sees it, let the trees remind you you were always enough. I cried. I didn't try to stop it. I just let it happen. The next spring, I applied for a preservation grant. The cabin was old, but the foundation was solid. With the help of some friends, we started transforming it. Still rustic, still her space, but with life again. I turned the extra room into a small reading nook. Emily planted herbs out back. Devin built a canoe rack. And one morning, after making coffee and watching the sun rise over the lake, I finally felt it. Freedom. Not revenge, not closure wrapped in bitterness, just space. Breathing room. A new chapter where I wasn't defined by anyone else's selfishness. The family I was born into, they're a ghost now, not because I hate them, but because they chose absence the moment I stopped being useful. And me, I'm still here, still standing, still choosing to live in a world where love isn't a weapon, where boundaries are protection, not punishment, where peace is louder than any voicemail. That's the end of it. They lost me. And I found myself. Story 2, my name is Rowan Ellis 32, and I am typing this at 2:17 a.m. while the apartment smells like cold espresso and singed hope. Tomorrow was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, I am counting the seconds between heartbeats, trying to work out when my life bent off course. I grew up in a lakeside town that looked perfect in postcards, but hurt up close. My step-cousin Vaughn Mercer 30 arrived when we were 10. His mom married my uncle, Suddenly, we were cousins, best friends, secret rivals. Vaughn could charm thunder from clouds. I collected library fines and freckles. Teachers loved him. Grandparents adored him. I learned to clap on cue. After college, I left for the city, earned my EMT badge, and found peace in the wail of sirens. Saving strangers felt easier than saving myself. 2 summers ago, a stubborn apartment fire sent 5 smoke-soaked survivors to my ambulance. One of them was Ivy Reyes, 29, a jewelry artist with soot on her cheeks and jokes in her pockets. She thanked me by sketching my smile on a cafe napkin. I thanked her by asking if she believed in reckless dinners. We never looked back. The engagement was fast. Life can snap. We wanted to choose our own explosion. My parents cheered. Vaughn offered to help plan because networking is my love language. He booked venues, bullied florists into discounts, and mailed invites before I'd memorized the guest list. I tried to be grateful. Grateful is what I do. Still, tiny things rattled. Ivy's laugh changed pitch when Vaughn walked into a room lighter, brighter. Once I caught them whispering near the catering samples. She jumped. Said that they were discussing surprise vows. Vaughn winked, said, "You'll thank me later." My gut flickered like a faulty bulb, then went dark again. Tonight was the rehearsal dinner in a renovated greenhouse strung with fairy lights. The air smelled of basil and expectation. Ivy disappeared to touch up lipstick. Vaughn vanished to hunt the DJ. I mingled, shook hands, told stories I'd told before. When desert arrived, neither had returned. A thunderstorm pressed against the glass ceiling. Guests checked watches. My mother worried the soufflés would collapse. I excused myself and searched the building. Empty bridal suite, empty service corridor. Rain hit the panes like thrown rice. My phone vibrated, a single text from an unknown number. Level 8, storage. A finger of ice traced my spine. The elevator felt like a coffin hauling itself upright. Level 8 was unfinished raw concrete and paint can echoes. At the far end, a half-open door leaked golden light. Inside, Ivy's dress pooled on the dusty floor beside Vaughn's tux jacket. Their shadows tangled on a workbench, slow, careless, confident. I didn't speak. I just watched until Vaughn noticed lips still brushing Ivy's shoulder. His grin spread cruel and bright. "Rowan," he said as if greeting me at brunch. "You always did show up too late." Time blurred. I remember backing out, rain hammering my hair as I reached the street, leaving my wallet, my keys, my past upstairs. I walked 3 miles home in soaked leather shoes, rehearsing sentences I will never use. Now I sit at my kitchen table. The fridge hums like distant applause. Wedding gifts tower in one corner, white paper glowing under cheap lamplight. Vaughn has stripped me of a fiancé, but not of tomorrow. Tomorrow I will give him something unforgettable. The storm outside is ending. Mine is just beginning. Fault lines widen. I swore the sun would never rise again yet. Dawn slide whistled through the blinds, yellow and indifferent, while I sat in yesterday's soaked clothes cataloging the damage. First item, my pride shredded. Second, my future currently fooling around on a paint-splattered workbench. Third, my spine, which had finally learned to stiffen. At 7:05 a.m., Cass Naidu, my ambulance partner of 5 years, banged on the door, caffeine and hand emergency in her eyes. Cass is 31, Hyderabad-born, sarcasm raised. She can read shock like Braille. One look and she bypassed greetings. "Ellis, did someone die?" I almost laughed at the accuracy. I told her the edited version, fiancé gone cousin, involved wedding off and ended with, "I need a plan before grief makes me polite again." Cass inhaled, processing, then asked the question that cracked the morning open. "Want payback or closure?" both I said, and the word tasted like steel. Cass's older brother, Gideon Park, adopted legal prodigy, owed Cass a lifetime of favors, met us for brunch, disguised as breakfast. Gideon, 34, looked at my tremoring hands, flipped open his tablet, and quizzed me on Vaughn's business ventures. Vaughn sells experiential marketing solutions, which is corporate gloss for events where influencers pretend to care. Gideon dug deeper, eyes flicking. In 10 minutes, he found pending lawsuits, unpaid contractors, and a dormant nonprofit funneling money in triangle shapes. My rage found direction. Step 2 required subtlety, so obviously we involved Aunt Lila, my 60-year-old florist aunt with the moral flexibility of wet rope. Lila handled half the wedding decor and quietly hated Vaughn's taste in roses. She loaned us her studio after hours plus a bottle of port for medicinal plotting. We sat among buckets of peonies, mapping timelines. Ivy, it turned out, met Vaughn months before the fire at a gallery opening. I skipped for a double shift. Their overlapping travel receipts made snakes on Lila's corkboard. Betrayal triangulated. While Cass and Gideon tracked financial rot, I phoned venue's caterers and that bullied florist. I apologized, canceled, and hinted Vaughn might not pay his invoices. In 48 hours, every vendor demanded deposits back. Vaughn's perfect schedule imploded like a souffle in a stampede. Social media ever thirsty sniffed the drama. I posted a single-line celebration postponed details soon. Friends texted condolences. I screenshotted them as witnesses. The old Rowan would have stopped there, satisfied with disruption, but the new version called him reconstruction. Rowan wanted a teachable moment set to drum and bass. Cass suggested flipping the reception into a charity gala, repurposing the greenhouse to fund rescue gear for under-equipped EMT units. Gideon negotiated the venue for free by dangling Vaughn's scandals over management like mistletoe. Aunt Lila rallied volunteers, promising them front-row seats to Karmic Theater. 2 nights before the would-be ceremony, I typed invitations labeled Unwedding, a celebration of survival and transparency. I sent one to Ivy's studio email, one to Vaughn's corporate address, and one printed copy slid under their loft door at 3 a.m. The act felt equal parts petty and surgical. Daybreak of the gala glued gray clouds to the skyline, but inside the greenhouse the air shimmered with purpose. EMT colleagues hauled demo stretchers, local bands tuned guitars, and Lila's peonies refocused the room away from memories of rehearsal dinners. I wore my suit dry-cleaned, defiantly tailored. Cass pinned a paramedic patch over the boutonniere slot, her version of a family crest. Guests arrived curious, stayed because curiosity served cocktails. I took the mic voice steadier than my pulse and told the story of smoke-soaked survivors of funding gaps that strangle first response time of communities saving themselves when systems stall. Applause rose like wind. Donations pinged digital buckets. For 40 glorious minutes, I forgot betrayal existed. The illusion shattered when Vaughn swaggered in Ivy, trailing 2 steps behind like a regretful comet. He wore a linen blazer creased from rushing. She clutched a jewelry box like an inhaler. Gasps rippled. Vaughn applauded, slow, ironic. Rowan, you market tragedy better than I ever could. Cameras pivoted. My heart repositioned behind bone armor. Before I spoke, Gideon stepped forward, tablet in hand, projecting Vaughn's unpaid tax documents onto the rented LED wall. Numbers screamed fraud. Lila dimmed the lights for cinematic effect. Cass cued audio of vendors reciting bounced checks. The crowd's hush mutated into a courtroom hush. Vaughn's grin faltered. Ivy's face drained to primer white. She opened the jewelry box. Inside lay my grandmother's engagement ring, the one missing from my bedside drawer. He said you'd forgotten it, she whispered. Voice cracking through the mic, Vaughn forgot to mute. Collective exhale sharp as hail. I stayed calm because storms are predictable once you study pressure systems. Keep it, I told her. Meaning the ring, the guilt, the memory. Just listen. I outlined Gideon's findings, every shell company, every falsified invoice, each victim left unpaid. No theatrics, just facts. Truth is its own fireworks. Police weren't called. They were already present off-duty medics moonlighting security. They guided Vaughn outside, not in cuffs, but in scrutiny's spotlight. He finally looked small. Ivy remained trembling. I offered her water, spite as heavy hydration helps. Donations doubled before midnight. The venue manager asked if we could make the gala annual. I answered yes, because some fires deserve anniversaries. As cleanup began, Cass nudged me. Closure achieved. Revenge. I surveyed the remains, Vaughn's reputation, in cinders, Ivy free to rebuild funds secured for life-saving gear. Revenge enough, I said, though a new tremor in my gut suggested the story wasn't over. I glimpsed Ivy speaking to a stranger in a charcoal peacoat. He handed her a flash drive, eyes scanning exits. She slipped it into her purse, noticing me too late. Her smile warned of aftershocks. I left the greenhouse under faint drizzle pulse, drumming a code, older than language danger yet to come. Back at my apartment, an envelope waited on the doormat. No stamp, no return address. My name typed neat. Inside, a single photograph, me hauling a victim from a collapsed nightclub last year, sweat and soot streaking my face. On the back ink bled one sentence, heroes burn brightest. The night reeled open. I felt the earth tilt. Vaughn's downfall had lit corridors I hadn't explored, and whatever moved in them just said hello. Tomorrow the real rescue might start with saving myself. Aftershocks unveiled. The envelope hovered near the toaster like a hex, its snapshot of me hauling a stranger from wreckage anchored by the scribble heroes burn brightest. I tried calling the sender, no number. Threats prefer the one-way lane. Cass argued for police. Gideon advised patience, his legal instincts wary of premature moves. Waiting, chafed, yet rushing blind had scorched me once already. By noon, I drove back to the greenhouse to collect leftover medical props. Volunteers wound cables and stacked folding chairs. Ivy was absent, breathing got easier. A janitor I didn't recognize lingered by the exit uniform, too crisp posture, too guarded. When our eyes met, he tipped his cap, revealing a healed scar over his right brow, then vanished behind a catering truck. On my windshield, he left a business card. You can't save everyone. Pier 17, 9 p.m. No name, only a watermark, a phoenix mid-molting. Gideon traced the logo in minutes to Phoenix and Crown Investigations, a boutique security firm famous for extracting whistleblowers from corporate infernos. Founder, Kazuo Cake Mori, disappeared from headlines 5 years ago after testifying against a weapons contractor. Scar matched. Cass packed pepper spray. I packed stubborn curiosity. Pier 17 reeked of diesel and July tide. Cargo cranes froze against a bruised sunset as Case stepped from shadows, hands visible. Rowan Ellis, he rasped. Your cousin's scheme is one spark in a citywide fire. You just kicked over the accelerant. He sketched the outline. Vaughn's experiential marketing hustle masks a laundering loop for a consortium that buys derelict buildings, engineers disasters, then pockets insurance and redevelopment grants. The gallery blaze where Ivy and I met their work. The nightclub collapse in my photo, same architects. I was an uncontrolled variable. Public heroics draw investigations. Eliminating me keeps profit margins clean. Case produced the flash drive Ivy received at the gala. Target list, he said. She funneled it to me. Surveillance spotted the pass. He needed a medic with legitimate access past emergency cordons. My EMT badge was a skeleton key. Saying yes felt reckless and inevitable. I texted Cass special rescue detail. Back soon. She responded with a skull and a beating heart. Do not die, love you anyway. Our first stop, an unlicensed chemical warehouse slated to accidentally explode before dawn. Inside, rows of solvent drums were wired to timers, 23 minutes ticking down. Training took over. I cut ignition lines, sprayed suppressant, jammed valve wheels. Case's drone captured everything. He zipped footage to a secure cloud and pinged fire marshals anonymously. Sirens approached as we slipped out. A black SUV blocked the alley. Vaughn climbed out tie askew, flanked by 2 masked enforcers. Rowan, he sighed, always dousing the wrong flames. He offered a deal, walk away, let the blast wipe evidence, and he'd disappear with Ivy wealthy and unharmed. I told him Ivy had already chosen integrity. Rage cracked his grin. A scuffle erupted, pepper spray joint locks a tire iron tracing my shoulder. I zip-tied Vaughn just as police cruisers screeched in. While officers cuffed him for trespass and possession of incendiaries, he screamed that bigger fires were coming. We regrouped at an abandoned diner beneath dying neon. Case spread a map marked with red circles. Next on the consortium's docket, a commuter ferry rumored to be loaded with defective lithium batteries. We had maybe 12 hours. My arm throbbed, but purpose overrode pain. We finished this, I said. Case tapped the map, meeting my gaze. Heroes burn brightest, he repeated, but the wise ones light beacons, not funeral pyres. Dawn loomed outside, carrying potential ash and potential rescue. For the first time since Vaughn's betrayal, I felt steady. Fires had chased me. Now I would lead them, turn their heat into illumination. Ember tide. I left the gutted diner with Case just as a hush settled over the city, the kind of pre-storm silence that tricks birds into pausing mid-flight, and my ribs hummed with the memory of Vaughn's threat about bigger fires. The commuter ferry we needed to save the harbor swift carried 400 weekday souls and 2 snack carts. If it lit up downtown, would earn a floating tomb. Cass met us at the marina in grease-streaked overalls, Gideon trailing with a laptop bulging from his messenger bag like an overgrown organ. He had convinced a sleepy judge to sign a sealed warrant covering any device we seized on board. Case explained the battery plot again, slower. His voice the sound of worn gravel crates of defective lithium cells hidden beneath recycling bins on the car deck, wired to a temperature amplifier that would push them into thermal runaway halfway across the river, well outside sprinkler range. To board unnoticed, we borrowed uniforms from a maintenance crew distracted by free coffee and Gideon's forged work order. My EMT badge swung from my breast pocket like a homesick compass as we marched up the gangway at 0412 gulls, screaming warnings only we seemed to hear. Inside the ferry, the air tasted like penny dust and disinfectant. While Case slipped to engineering to locate the trigger, Cass and I descended to the car deck. Rows of silent vehicles loomed, dew beating on hoods, hiding the battery's coffin crates. I knelt and pressed my palm to a rust-orange container. Heat drummed under the metal skin, already past safe. Cass whistled through her teeth and traced the lead wires toward a ventilation shaft. The cable ended in a black relay box taped to a CO2 sensor clever, because engine fumes would spike levels and mask any thermal alarm until it was too late. I cut the red strand, then the yellow, buying us minutes rather than hours. Over intercom, a cheerful voice announced boarding for the 6 o'clock crossing, tourists filtering onto upper decks while we crawled under chassis. Case's voice popped in my earpiece, found primary detonator and generator room need bypass code. Gideon positioned in the empty snack bar, hammered keys, decrypting a hex string torn from Vaughn's confiscated phone. The code arrived just as Case reported rising coolant pressure. Someone upstairs had noticed a glitch and hit a failsafe. He disarmed the relay with 1 second on the LED. Relief lasted a breath. Footsteps clanged down the access ladder. I pivoted, expecting security. Instead, Ivy emerged, hair shoved under a hard hat, eyes reflecting the flicker of hazard lights. "Rowan, don't yell," she blurted, hands raised. "I'm on your side now." My lungs pinched as memory whipped up smoke, but time was lava, we didn't have it to spare. She told me Phoenix and Crown had recruited her days after the gallery fire, promising redemption if she fed them Vaughn's travel itineraries. The pass at the gala was her first open hand. "Trust is brittle glass." I set it down gently. Engines rumbled to life. Through portholes, the river glimmered gunmetal. Cass radioed that a second series of cell packs hid behind a false bulkhead near the starboard lifeboats, wired to go if the first attempt failed. We sprinted along a corridor that smelled of wet rope. Ivy led us to a supply closet concealing a narrow crawl space. Midway through, a figure blocked the exit, the scar-browed janitor from the greenhouse, no longer pretending, pistol leveled. His name, he said, was Mercer, no relation, cruel coincidence, and his orders were termination with prejudice. I froze back, pressed to steel. Mercer smirked, finger tightening. Ivy faked a stumble, knocking a dangling fire extinguisher. It swung like a wrecking ball into Mercer's wrist. The shot went wild, shredding an exit sign. Cass lunged, wrench in hand, and subdued him with 2 decisive arcs. I zip-tied wrists while Ivy kept lookout. In the bulkhead compartment, the backup battery bank pulsed a malignant red. Gideon counted 7 minutes to automated detonation rigged to the ferry's GPS once mid-river boom. The only way to abort was to physically separate every cell string, 32 quick-release clamps, each calibrated to trip a tamper sensor. Panic wanted center stage, but training shoved it into the wings. Cass and I worked opposite ends, calling clamp numbers like surgeons. Sweat blurred my vision. Plastic tabs sliced knuckles raw. When the last clamp flipped, the timer froze at 0013. Silence spread thick as syrup. Overhead, PA speakers crackled. "All passengers, please proceed to disembark." Unexpected mechanical delay. Case had seized the bridge, steering the vessel back to dock under guise of engine trouble. As crowds shuffled off, police and Coast Guard surged on, arresting Mercer and seizing the lethal cargo. Case emerged, coat flaring like a storm flag, and handed the captain a flash drive, the same damning files Ivy had couriered, evidence syncing to federal servers faster than any broom could sweep. On the pier, sunrise painted the skyline rose and gold, a color weddings borrow for hope. Reporters barked questions. I dodged with practiced half-smiles. Vaughn, already jailed for the warehouse stunt, now faced conspiracy charges that stacked like bricks. The consortium's board, revealed by Gideon's warrant, scattered lawyers like sandbags. Yet victory tasted bittersweet. I thanked Ivy but kept distance, my trust meter recalibrating. She understood, promising to testify in exchange for witness protection. Cass clapped my shoulder, eyes exhausted but bright. "Closure round 2, she asked. "Closer," I said, watching ambulances haul evidence rather than victims. For once, sirens sang triumph. But as officers cordoned the ferry, a drone buzzed overhead, dropping a small thermal envelope at my feet. Inside, a USB stamped with the Phoenix emblem and a single phrase etched on metal beacon lit. "Inferno watching." Gideon scanned it inside a Faraday pouch. The drive contained schematics for 6 metropolitan transit hubs, each marked with red scorch icons. The consortium wasn't a hydra we had beheaded. It was a wildfire we had steered toward fresh timber. Case exhaled smoke from a cheap clove cigarette, gaze tracing clouds. "They'll pivot to contingency targets," he warned. "You're on their legend board now, Ellis." Fear fluttered, but did not roost. I'd spent years pulling strangers from ruin. If destiny wanted another tour, I'd lace my boots and bring friends. I looked at my patchwork team, Cass wiping the engine grease. Gideon analyzing patterns, Ivy standing in fragile courage, Case already plotting next move, and felt a steadiness I hadn't known since before Vaughn gate crashed my life. Heroes may burn brightest, but together we could shape the flame into signal rather than sacrifice. The river lapped against pilings like applause. Somewhere alarms readied themselves. Fire breaks. The next 48 hours blurred into a knot of caffeine and strategy as we raced to decode the consortium's next move. Gideon extracted 6 red scorch icons from the Phoenix USB, the earliest hovering over Union Interchange, the underground nerve where subway, regional rail, and gas mains share claustrophobic space. If that hub burned, half the city would gridlock while the other half inhaled fire. Case argued the devices were already seated, simply waiting for public attention to drift from our ferry rescue. Cass called it their spite marinate phase. Either way, the clock ticked louder than my pulse. We commandeered an abandoned library basement as our ops center. The air smelled of mildew and overdue apologies, but Gideon's rewired fiber line hummed. Ivy cross-matched forged contractor badges she once made for Vaughn against live subway cam stills. 3 perfect matches popped fake maintenance crews scheduled for tonight. Cass loaded our ambulance with vent masks, non-lethal darts, and a defibrillator doubling as a door jammer. I thanked her for packing trauma gauze as if fate were predictable. At 23:07, we rolled into Union Interchange disguised as hazmat techs responding to a chlorine leak. A sleepy supervisor waved us through after Gideon flashed a QR code that would redirect any curious soul to cat memes. Beneath the platform lights, rats darted between soda cups, oblivious to the heat building behind cinder block walls. Ivy guided us to a service hatch. Her hands shook. Redemption. I told her is a marathon during an earthquake. Inside the maintenance corridor, the temperature punched upward. Case knelt by a steel locker wired as a control node. Red LEDs winked like malevolent fireflies. Daisy-chained, he muttered. Trip 1 detonator, every charge accelerates. Cass traced conductive gel smeared along conduit brackets. Any spark could light a domino inferno. While Case spoofed a cloud checksum, Gideon's voice warned guards were 2 minutes away. Ivy dashed back, flooding the tunnel with peppermint fog from a portable sanitizer. When security arrived eyes-watering, I shouted Protocol 58 Delta, and they retreated. Jargon often wins. Checksum cleared, Case froze the circuit. I clipped detonator leads in thermal order while Cass neutralized the gel. The last snip felt like cutting strings from a puppet master. We bagged the inert bombs and slipped out before alarms reconsidered. Back at the library, Case brewed tar-black coffee and mapped the next icons: a power substation, a hospital oxygen farm, 3 commuter tunnels. Gideon's warrant authority was taffy thin. We needed official muscle. Cass set a dawn meeting with Chief Valdez of Emergency Services. Pre-dawn fog cloaked City Hall as I presented photos logs, Vaughn's decrypted phone, and our diffused payload. Valdez's jaw tightened, then she launched a citywide sweep codenamed Firebreak. Victory tasted brief, success breeds scrutiny, and scrutiny invites politicians who prefer optics to accuracy. Hashtags sprouted, hashtag ferry heroes, hashtag union intervention, hashtag Phoenix plot, providing the consortium a list of people to eliminate. By evening, Gideon uncovered the consortium's true profit path: post-disaster rebuild contracts funneled through a shell charity. Torch a tunnel, win a bid. Valdez greenlit raids on addresses tied to the shell. One warehouse stood empty, another townhouse bristled with surveillance gear, and an upscale hotel suite yielded our earlier enforcer Mercer murdered throat clean as an accountant's ledger. Failure had a body count. Ivy trembled, she feared the same erasure. I promised safe houses, but internally rehearsed exit routes. Case predicted the consortium would accelerate. That night I slept in an idling ambulance under Cass's guard dreams, looping Vaughn's warning about bigger fires. At 03:42, an anonymous text blinked a GPS pin and the phrase, Final Ember. The location's Starlight Children's Hospital, where I volunteer. A medical supply convoy carrying liquid oxygen tanks was due before dawn. One rupture would turn the wing into shrapnel confetti. I roused the team. Adrenaline grows edges when kids are at stake. We reached the loading bay at 04:10. Cameras looped, a static frame tampered. Cass climbed a ladder to reset feeds while Ivy hacked the badge reader. Inside the mechanical room, timed chargers beeped a 3-minute countdown. Bolt cutters in hand, I severed wires while Cass drenched connections with suppressant foam. Outside, a truck screeched through the gate early. Behind the wheel was Milo Vaughn's half-brother, eyes wide with fear. A gunman in paramedic fatigues forced him forward. Cass's dart ricocheted off a mirror. As the truck lunged, Ivy waved a road flare, blinding Milo's captor. Milo braked, clipping a bollard inches from the oxygen tanks. The gunman leapt out, aiming at Ivy. Case's beanbag launcher dropped him cold. Sirens converged. Chief Valdez herself oversaw arrests. Children upstairs slept on, dreaming of galaxies rather than betrayal. Behind cameras, Valdez warned the consortium's board remained phantom, moving money like mercury. Milo confessed operatives threatened his newborn. The cruelty poisoned silence. We regrouped at the library, nerves frayed, but embers contained this time. Gideon traced a fresh wire transfer to an offshore vault set for midnight, enough cash to bankroll another year of engineered catastrophes. The conflagration's end at midnight approached like a held breath, while storm clouds stitched electric seams across the harbor sky, and our makeshift war room vibrated with laptop fans and heartbeats. Gideon's map glowed cobalt, pinpointing the consortium board's final retreat. An armored super yacht named Chimera, moored beyond customs reach, scheduled to depart at Oro 2 Hausero with servers, ledgers, and enough laundered millions to resurrect a new cycle of disasters abroad. Federal warrants stopped at the tide line. Morality did not. Case outlined our only path: slip aboard during crew rotation, clone the data vault, broadcast it to every compliance agency on both hemispheres, then disable the yacht's engines to keep the villains pinned in friendly waters. Simple the way lightning is simple, raw charge seeking ground. Cass volunteered to pilot the approach. Her uncle's crab boat, the Banyan, could pass for a supply tender. Ivy forged manifests claiming we carried spare desal filters. The digital seals would fool anyone until dawn. Milo still under guard, yet desperate to erase guilt-supplied crew schedules from Vaughn's cloud cache. My role was blunt EMT authority, meant I could claim a medical emergency and tour restricted decks without raising brows. At Oro 114, we motored through chop salt spray, needling cheeks. I breathed deep brine mixed with ozone, the scent of endings and beginnings. The Chimera loomed, lights dim to night protocol. Her hull a black mirror where bolts of lightning posed for seconds before vanishing. We hailed the deck officer, Cass faking radio static, then tied off starboard as cranes hoisted our filters. Gideon remained on the Banyan antenna array, aimed skyward, ready to siphon every byte my body cam transmitted. Inside corridors gleamed sterile. Anxious financiers in cashmere paced while security whispered into earpieces. I pressed a hand to my earpiece too, pretending triage updates, and kept moving heart-drumming Morse. Case ghosted ahead in engineer coveralls. Ivy trailed me with a rolling case hiding her hub laptop. Past the galley, we reached the data center, a glass cube humming with petaflop arrogance. 2 guards blocked entry, bored yet armed. I stumbled forward, clutching my shoulder, faking chest tightness. Possible myocardial? I gasped. Training sold the performance. Guards waved Ivy inside to monitor vitals while they called for their medic, who conveniently was me. Case slipped through service duct overhead, dropping behind the racks unseen. 30 seconds later, the fire suppression alarm howled. Red strobes disoriented the guards. Inert gas flooded safe for humans, but death to spinning drives unless vac-sealed. They rushed for override. I jammed the panel with a trauma shear, locking the cycle. Case cloned the mirrored array to Ivy's laptop in a torrent of green bars. Outside, thunder cracked like artillery. On the bridge, the captain barked orders to cast off early. Cass, still topside, disguised as deckhand, yanked a breaker that killed starboard thrusters. I sprinted up the companionway, intercepting a tux-clad director, wielding a pistol he clearly respected yet barely understood. Years of lifting stretchers made my tackle explosive. The gun skittered beneath a chart table. Ivy emerged, drive secured, shoving a flare into my palm. "Signal, Gideon," she said. I fired it through an access port. A magenta comet arced into rain. The Banyan lit her running lights and broadcast the treasure trove: live bank transfers, bribery ledgers, architectural sabotage diagrams tagging every major newsroom and agency. Digital sirens of notification cascaded across phones worldwide. Panic metastasized. Some board members tried bribery, others force. Case disabled the helm with a crowbar to the servo bus. Engines hiccuped into inertia. Harbor patrol cutters, alerted by Gideon's public dump, sped our way. Lightning stitched closer, righteous spotlight. Amid chaos, Vaughn appeared, escorted from the brig where lesser charges had held him pending transfer. He glared at me across a tilting deck, rain painting his expensive suit to skin. "All this for vengeance," he yelled above wind. I shook my head. "For prevention." He lunged, rage overriding caution, but the slick deck chose sides. He slipped, slamming into a railing. I grabbed his wrist before the sea claimed him. Not mercy, just refusal to let death eclipse justice. Handcuffs clicked courtesy of arriving patrol. Dawn leaked gold through shredded clouds as authorities swarmed the immobilized yacht. Kids at Starlight awoke to news anchors hailing unnamed guardians. Commuters shared articles instead of condolences. The consortium's empire crumbled in real-time assets, frozen passports flagged. Heroes, some said. Vigilantes, others argued. I felt neither, only relief heavy as sodden boots. Weeks later, courtroom air unmoving, I testified. Evidence spoke louder than voice. Vaughn accepted a plea, decades assured. Ivy entered witness protection. We exchanged a final nod across Marble Hall, an apology compressed into silence. Gideon got offers from cybercrime units. He chose pro bono advocacy instead. Case vanished like a match guttered in wind, leaving a single postcard, a phoenix drawn in ash captioned, "Beacons lit." Cass and I still ride ambulances. Sirens wail, we answer the city, learning that not every alarm signals despair. Sometimes after shift, we sit by the river where the harbor swift docks, watching wakes braid silver paths. I hold no wedding ring yet. I carry lighter burdens. Pain forged a purpose broader than vows. People ask if I'd change anything. I tell them flames reveal metal's true grain. Let them rage by a mai. We'll mold sparks into watchfires, guiding anyone lost in smoke back to solid ground. The storm that began on a rehearsal night is over. I'm still here, unburned, guiding embers toward dawn.